Well, again, like I said, thank you so much, everyone, for coming tonight and hearing Tyrre's story. And I think what you've received so many awards for Players Health and the great things that you're doing to help, students and coaches and parents. So you're really hitting the core of the family life and the athletes that want to become professionals. So what I thought I would do is ask you a little bit about, who's Tyrre? Kind of going back when you were a younger child, and if you had a mentor or someone that really helped you figure out who you were. Maybe it was a grandmother or a brother or a neighbor or a teacher, but just kind of going way back when you were very young.
Well, honestly, I think my mom always comes up first. Luckily I've been blessed to have so many people that have affected my life positively. I wouldn't be here today if I didn't. My mom was easily probably the number one kind of motivator for me. Single mom. I grew up in the south side of Chicago, and I had a really good childhood. That's really, she created a space that allowed me to believe that I could do anything I wanted to, and that was really kind of fundamental for me to be who I am today, is that I had the space to fail, make mistakes, try things, and I was never kind of shunned for it. It was like, oh, well, you just messed up on that, we'll try something else. And that was always kind of the space that was created in our household for me to kind of, step out on the ledge and try new things.
What about siblings? Did you have any siblings?
I did. So my little brother is actually 10 years younger than me. So we're 10 years apart. It's a huge gap, but super close. And my little brother, he goes to school at UW Milwaukee.
Okay.
And he's just a good dude. I love him.
So as you were growing up, was there a time when anyone told you could not do something?
So many. I think one of the things that when I first started out, I went to a Carver Military Academy. It's a public military school. It's one of the largest public military academies in the United States, actually. I went to that school, and I was probably easily the worst football player on my team. I was like the tackling dummy. Everyone, we're going to put him in every drill. This guy's never going to give up, but I really wasn't that good. And I had really big dreams. Like when I first went out for football, I knew it was the sport. I was like, I'm gonna play professional, and everyone was like, what? Like, you are the worst football player on our team. Only I showed up early and I stayed late every day for the rest of my career. And it got me to a point where I was actually able to give myself a chance. And that's all you really want, is a chance. And so I think when I first kind of got going, I think my high school football coach at the time was just like, Tyrre, you can't catch a big bag of balls. And I played receiver at that point, so you want to be able to catch the ball, and I worked on it. And so in the beginning, of course, I had a ton of people that were like, you know what, Tyrre, you can't do this. And then that continued to happen when, I was in college. I think my freshman year, I went to a junior college actually because I didn't have the grades fresh out of high school to go to a 4-year. And my freshman year, my college coach he really didn't like me. Like, really didn't. But he really...
Why do you think he didn't like you?
Honestly, I just had too much willpower for him.
Okay.
I was really prideful, and I worked really hard, and he could not play me. And that really irked him. And really, I was just really one of those passionate kids that showed up every day, and I worked my butt off to kind of get to where I was at, and I expected something out of myself. And I don't think he had never seen that in a kid that young. He had never seen a kid that mature before. That really didn't need much. I really looked within myself in terms of things that I wanted, and I knew what I wanted to do, and I had a path to go about doing it. So I wasn't showing up late. I'm showing up early. I was on a mission. And I finally understood that, there's nothing wrong with me being that. I chase perfection. That's kind of how I've always been. And it was a struggle. So I remember one day we were running around the track. We were getting punishment as a team. And literally, he was like, Ty, we're not going to stop running this. We're not going to stop running this track until you quit. Like, I want you off my team. And I was like, whoa. And I was like, well, every guy on this team is going to have to quit before I quit. And I was literally, we were running 400s if you know track. Yep. So basically, you just keep running. So we're on like 16th lap. Our whole starting squad just quit. People are just walking off the field, and I'm fresh from track season. I'm in the best shape of my life, and I'm just leading the route. And literally he calls it up. Hey guys, you know, I didn't want to have to do this, but I didn't quit, and I just kept going.
Wow, that's an amazing story, because that shows your persistence. You believe in what you believe in, and no one can get in the way. And I think that's important, especially as an entrepreneur, because you're going to hear people tell you, you can't do this, there's no way. No, you can't, you don't have this, you don't have that, there's no way that your ideas. But your behavior that started way back when has helped you become so successful.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, have you gone back to those coaches? Have you?
What's so funny, so that same coach called me. I had got a full ride scholarship. I went to Winona State. And my junior year, I was newcomer of the NSIC, which is our conference. I had a really good year. And he called me and was like, Ty, I knew you were going to be good. And honestly, I was like, you know what, thanks coach for appreciating you calling me. And he had called me because I was going through some things personally. I had just lost my mom right after that season. And he was like, you know, Ty, I knew you were going to be good. And it was really more of like him kind of following up with me because he knew I was going through a bunch of stuff. But I had just got through coming off the best season of my career, which kind of helped me kind of have the opportunity to play professionally because I did so well that year.
Well, I think it's interesting with coaches, as well as business leaders, is the coach or the business leader knows the potential of that person you're coaching. Even though you think you can do it and you're going to do it, but the coach sees that you think you can go here, he's going to push you to go here.
Exactly.
And so that obviously, I think everyone was seeing that in you, and they may have used a little reverse psychology and said, there's no way you can do it, and you're like, I'm going to do this. Right. It might have happened, because I can see that.
I wouldn't put it past them.
Yeah. So I love hearing the stories of, you know, growing up and the people that are in your lives. Do you have, in the last like 5-6 years, as your company, you're maturing from a business standpoint, but ultimately you're trying to solve a challenge and a crisis that's out there when it comes to the health and wellness of kids. But in the last 5 years, has there been a mentor or someone who's really given you some really good guidance?
A ton of things.
And who and how?
I have had so many mentors, I think, throughout my career. I think one of the first ones I think about is my life coach. His name is Tyrre. I met Chance almost about 5 years ago. Okay. And I had just got through playing football, and I met this guy that held so much power. Like when he walked into a room and he spoke, you wanted to be like him. And that was just kind of how I felt when I first met him. But he taught me how to really handle things mentally. Really, I think coming from playing football to now being an entrepreneur, I think one of the biggest kind of, what I say, learning curves that I have to do is just really understanding how to really play chess and understanding that everything is strategic in terms of how I do everything. And understanding that that I'm going to have interactions with people that I may not like, but I'm going to have to continue to work with them. And I wasn't really accustomed to that coming up to that point, but he helped me with that. Another big mentor of mine is a guy named Corey Farringle. He was the VP of a company called Ruby, took that company public. He ultimately ended up being one of my first investors, came in, and now he sits on my board. And then I guess one of the biggest ones kind of from a CEO perspective is a guy named John Bardis. His daughter actually works for us, but John Bardis is the he's the Assistant Secretary for the Department of Health for the United States. John took 3 companies public, all healthcare, and he sold his last company, I think, for like $5 billion. But
Wow.
he is hands down, he could pastor a church tomorrow, by the way. So he's super humble, and he really taught me what it means to be a leader in my own company, and to really lead with kind of mission and passion, and the money will follow. And I think we're now starting to see that.
Wow. Does anyone have any questions so far?
Well, I'm just curious about what was your impetus for this app and solution? Like what was the point where you said, I think there's something there?
Roughly about 2 years ago, I built an application before this. Early in my entrepreneur kind of career, it was a company called Team Interval that I started. It was a communication application for sports organizations, and I was selling to youth athletes, youth sports organizations. And it was basically messaging, playbooks, scheduling, things like that. And I had some early on success. I had about 8,000 users. We had a few universities and some youth organizations on board. And organically, we had an injury reporting feature in the system that was being used by coaches. And I started looking, the company was at a point where I kind of led with my own capital. We put about $360K into the company. It really wasn't, I think we made 27 grand in 3.5 years. And I was struggling to find a strong value proposition with these organizations. So I'm really good at pivoting in terms of just really understanding. I'm gonna look at the data. I'm gonna understand that this isn't the route that I need to go. And I'm gonna start trying to validate the new pivot. So I pitched the Players Health concept at this investor conference in Wisconsin, won the competition. And then I started thinking about my own personal story. So when I was about 16, I got hit with my head down and I was paralyzed on the turf. Literally could not move for about 45 minutes. Nothing was ever documented, managed. Come to find out I had the exact same injury again my freshman year of college. Come to find out I had 3 bulging discs in my neck, the head. And then towards the latter part of my professional career, my entire body kind of started to fall apart. I have lower back issues. I tore my hamstring off my tibia. And then literally all the muscles in my legs were affected due to kind of my alignment being thrown off, all because it was mismanaged when I was younger. So that was really, I started looking at, all right, this is my own personal story, and here's an app that we built with functionality that we never presented to a sports organization as the main value prop, but was being used. And then I presented it, concussions, everything was kind of the crave at that point, roughly a height about 3 years ago. And I shut down Team Interval instantly. And then I doubled down with my own capital to build a prototype. And that was really kind of the start of it.
I think what's unique is you're solving a problem that a lot of people have, but your core mission is you went through it, you experienced it. And that's why I think you're also very successful, is because when you're up there telling these stories on how you have the product to help not go through what you went through and how it's being documented. So I was talking to someone the other day and they just were sharing with me how brilliant it is that you're actually getting to the parents. You're not just getting to the kids, but you're getting to the parents that love their kids, want to help, as well as talking to the coaches. So I just, that was kind of...
And it's because I'm a parent, right? You know,
Yeah.
My son's 11. He's a competitive basketball player. We're in the beginning of travel basketball season, and I see injuries happen all the time, like all the time. He plays basketball, baseball, and he does 7-on-7 football. There's nothing the kid doesn't do, and I see injuries happen all the time.
Has he learned chess yet?
He hasn't learned chess. Definitely needs to.
Christmas time, you need to give him a chessboard.
Exactly. I'm on it. Or checkers. What are the other? But I think, you know, I'm seeing this. You know, I sit on the board for my son's association in Apple Valley. I'm living kind of what we're doing. And I see that there's a huge need because we're so lax when it comes to health and wellness in amateur sports, especially club sports. Like, the mindset is that, okay, yeah, kid got hurt, it happens. And we're seeing billions of dollars in medical bills. we'll just say $1 billion last year was spent on ACLs in women's soccer. Like,
Right here.
just women's youth soccer, $1 billion was spent on ACLs. And it just happens. And that's the mindset that we have. And what we're trying to do is help these organizations look at this proactively. And there's a ton of education that's required. And there's a ton of credibility that has to be built and a ton of rapport that has to be built with these sports organizations before they can trust us. And that's really what we're focused on doing here.
So you're here in Minneapolis. You came from Chicago. Do you see Players Health expanding other locations? Because I know that you offer services, Canada, all over the place. But do you see yourself opening up another office or expanding? Is there any future?
That is a good question. So we moved to Minneapolis about 1.5 years ago. We were based out of Matter, which is a huge health tech incubator in Chicago. And I met Justin, the CEO here at Sport Engine, saw what was going on here in Minnesota. And a month later, I was subleasing a place in St. Paul. Luckily, my wife happened to be from Minnesota, so it wasn't a hard sell. But I came here, and it was really, I think it was the best decision I've ever made for our company. People here in Minnesota get youth sports. They're passionate about it. I think there's a system built here for the managing, and there's this good programming, good structure. In Canada, we were introduced to an opportunity with youth sport, which is the NCAA of Canada. And we had been working on that deal for about 1 year. Come to find out, we closed this deal. It's a 3-year injury surveillance study. All the college athletes in Canada, we're implementing that in May 2018. And then now there's a presence for me to be in Canada because we're spending so much time with these sports organizations. We want to provide a good service, and they have the same, I think, scholastic sports system as we do in terms of starting from youth, high school, and so forth. So we have a 2-person office in Toronto that we've just opened up with one of our lead investors that just came in on this round that we just raised. And Canada is one of our launch pads right now for some of the new products that we're launching here in this 2018.
Awesome. But you're not leaving.
No, honestly, I will never leave Minnesota. I love this place. Like, I love it here.
That's good to hear.
Even in January?
Right.
Well, it's hockey season.
True. It's honestly, we live in Apple Valley and we moved from Evanston, so it's just a completely different world. Like, my son loves it here. Travel basketball, I've never seen organized basketball this way. And Chicago is like the hotbed of youth basketball. It's not as organized as it is here. And it's just amazing to see all these kids playing sports and doing what they love to do.
Well, also working with Sports Engine. You guys have a strong partnership together. So you're able to tap into their experience as well as, their camps or their leagues or, spreading that information even more so to overall help the youth.
Absolutely. The Sport Engine was a life changer for me. I think I met Justin 1.5 years ago, walked into this place and saw 350 people selling to youth sports clubs and coaches. That was all I needed to see. I was like, well, how the hell did these guys do this? And I need to be as close as I possibly can to these guys. And they happen to be really good guys, which, to see the success that they've had, for them to be as humble and just as helping as they are to us, because we're kind of little brother kind of growing up, but they see that we could be the next Sport Engine if we do this the right way, and they're trying to do everything they can to help us. So it was an easy decision for us to be here.
Yeah, Carson, those guys are awesome.
Oh, awesome.
So what type of advice would you give an entrepreneur? Just starting.
Just starting. I always start with this. I always start with my passion. Like, I believe that entrepreneurs that start a company out of a true need that they want to solve themselves are unstoppable. Your success is inevitable if you start a company with true passion around what you want to solve. If this is a problem you literally can't live without it being solved, it'll be solved, and you'll be the one to do it. So I think that's one of my first things, is that don't chase the money initially. I started my company wanting to give the app away for free, and everyone told me I was crazy. And because I have that type of heart, you know, I really want to impact this industry in that type of way. But I understand that in order for me to really be able to have a lasting impact, I'm going to have to make some money along the way so that we can keep the lights on. It took me a while to learn that. And one of the other big important things is learn how to build a team. I could not be more proud of the team that I've built, and I didn't do it alone, but last week we had our kind of a team meeting in Chicago, and we all sat around the table and everyone just kind of talked and gave their reasoning as to why they got into the company. This happened organically. We were a few tequila shots up, but the conversation got real because everyone was really just kind of talking about like why they're doing this. You know, we've gone through some really cold winters and summers, and for people to stick it out and to see kind of where we are today, the company is the team, like we're gonna solve the problem that we have because of the team we have. And I couldn't be more proud of kind of where we are right now.
So it's all about passion and your team.
Yeah, I can't do it by myself. So I'm really bad at finance and operations. I brought in our COO, Chris Pasegan, and I trust him with my life. And I think that's really important. Carrie, onboarding implementation, we had a call last week, it just blew me away. U-Sport call, which is this is a national implementation. We've onboarded 7 universities so far, and all 7 universities were on the call, and they asked the 7 universities, how's everything been going? And I have been completely removed from the entire process, and they had nothing but positive things to say. PlayersHealth does this, PlayersHealth does that, Carrie is on top of this, Carrie is on top of that. And I was just proud of her, and she wasn't even on the call. It was just amazing. Like, she wasn't on the call, completely impromptu, and they're communicating how this implementation went, working with her, and she represents our company. That's really the kind of team that we're building. Dylan, he was our intern a year ago, and he runs customer acquisition to see like who he's become and kind of growing and building. And you know, last year, I think we did 20K in revenue. We've done 1,000x that. We've done a little bit over 200K this year. All of those things are due to these people that are now coming in here and doing some good things. So I literally couldn't have done it without. And I think where we're going is going to be a testament to the team that we built.
So when you say where you're going, where are you going?
That's a really good question.
What can you tell us?
Yeah. So one of the things, when we first launched PlayersHealth, the idea is that we would build this health management application. And we would track injuries. We believed that sports organizations cared enough about managing the process of their injuries that they would want to document this stuff. And what we've learned is that it's a huge undertaking for an organization of 10,000 athletes or 5,000 or even 100 athletes that are all volunteer-ran-based organizations to implement a technology like this, and it doesn't give them an immediate monetary value in terms of savings or time. Like if they implement PlayersHealth, they're signing up for more work. Like we start the conversation there. Most of the organizations are like, well, Ty, this is great. For us to implement PlayersHealth, can this save us on our insurance? Like how can this save us money? And I never really had a good question or answer for that. So going into 2017, I made it my business. When did
that question start?
It started when we first launched. We started having these conversations, organizations were implementing, and now that they are collecting all of this data, because that's what it comes down to, and most organizations don't understand the power that they have once they implement. They'll see after one season, you'll see, oh, you've documented 75 injuries. How did those injuries happen? Why did they happen? Who documented most of the injuries? As a sports organization, I now have way more insight as to why, in terms of the risk that we have, because that's really what it is.
Right.
It's risk. So when all of these organizations are like, well, now that we have this data, can we go to our insurer and justify our lower premium? And I was at a loss for words. I had never been a part of the insurance industry, and so I took it upon myself to learn about how can we continue to add more value. So here it is a year now. I've immersed myself into the insurance industry, and we've decided to create our own insurance company. So within we won't say it's not 100% confidence, but if we implement a youth soccer club tomorrow, 100 athletes, we can tell that soccer club how many injuries they can anticipate before the end of the season. There's no other system that can do that. Like, if you have 100 athletes, you may have 23 injuries. And this is the profile of what those injuries look like.
Wow.
Do you have an athletic trainer? If you have an athletic trainer, you could see those reduced by 20%. These are numbers that helps the organization truly understand the risk. And that is the power that we have with these organizations. So we now understand this risk. We can now hold the risk and then underwrite these organizations properly. One of the things that have kind of changed within the youth sports is that the liability insurance for these sports organizations have doubled over the course of the past couple of years. So for my association, we were paying $16,000 for our 1,500 athletes. For the same 1,500 athletes, we pay $40,000 now for the same products. Nothing has changed, no claims. And it's all because of the risk. Concussions, lawsuits, like everything is a lot more prevalent in the space. So now we can properly price that organization to pay what they should be paying if they're doing the right things. So we're launching this platform called InsureGame, which is an online e-brokerage. Organizations can go onto our platform and pay for insurance. They'll get a quote real time in chat. InsureGame.
Okay.
And we've partnered with a few insurance carriers, and we'll be announcing all the insurance carriers that we partner with, but it gives organizations choice. And if they implement PlayersHealth, which is now free for them, my goal that I always wanted to be able to do, I can now do. And if they take our needs assessment, which is a kind of a safety assessment of how the organization currently is managing kind of the safety needs within their state, they get a 10% discount if they do just those two things. But they have to implement PlayersHealth north of 50%. So we can now add immediate value to the organization. We can save them money, and they get the risk management solutions for free. And we collect more data so that we can better price, lower risk if you're doing the right thing. So we can reward good behavior with a value add from a monetary perspective, which is kind of the main reason when we first started. Those were the questions that I had to answer.
So what's interesting to me is I'm hearing what you're sharing with us, and it's focused in on the youth.
Yeah.
Pro.
Right.
Wow.
And so there's a couple sports organizations, like luckily I was able to align myself with some really good investors. One of our investors is a company called PFS. They do all the liability insurance or disability insurance for pro athletes. So if I got a $50 million split contract where I make 25 upfront, 25 over the course of 5 years, say I get hurt, they'll make me whole in that 25 million. They're one of our investors. And they came in early before we even thought about the insurance side of things. They saw the value in just the PlayersHealth system. So we've then since brought in a bunch of other insurance advisors / investors to really help us become our own insurance company and help these organizations in the youth sports space. Now, people look at youth sports insurance and they go, oh, that market's pretty small. We're talking about a $2 billion market. If we're just talking about US and Canada, it's old, it's paper-driven, and it's a broker-driven type of transaction. So if I'm buying a $1,000 insurance policy for my sports organization, I have to talk to a broker to get that. When I really just need it because I need to rent my court space. Now I can buy it instantly and I can check out. So these are some of the value adds that we can provide to these organizations that they've never had before. It's transforming the industry when it comes to insurance.
You probably never thought you'd be talking about insurance.
I never would have thought that. And I think that's really what it comes down to. Like about a year ago, we failed to raise our Series A. We were raising $1.5 million. And every investor that we talked to were like, Ty, like the value proposition isn't strong enough. Like, how are you going to build a big business if we put $1.5 million into your company? And that's a really hard question when you're selling a $4 an athlete price point for an application that most organizations aren't being forced to use, like, you have to come with something a bit stronger than that. And me being naive as a young entrepreneur, thinking that, yeah, of course these organizations care about this. Of course it's worth $4. Of course everyone's going to sign up. I have to come with a little bit more than that. I really have to help show them how I can save them time and money, and how I can save their behinds, which is really what most of these organizations care about.
And it will scale.
Exactly.
I think that's probably number one thing. If
Right.
someone's going to invest in you, you have to be able to show them how you're going to scale. What's
Absolutely.
the plan? So, well, it's been really exciting seeing your company grow and seeing how, you know, you've received so many awards. Out of all of the awards that you've received, what is the most, I can't say the word, prestigious to you in your mind?
Yeah, it had to be the Google Award. I think, honestly, before that event, I really didn't believe that other investors / the tech community really would connect with a mission that we had. Like, when you think about big companies that are mission driven, you can't think of really one. There's a bunch of nonprofits that have for-profit models, but think about a company that's making a ton of money, that are in the tech crunches of the world, that are really doing some amazing things positively. And when we won that award, these were VC investors that said, this is a huge problem, there's money there. We don't know where, but it's there, and we'll bet on you. And that gave me the validation / confidence to bet on myself, because at that point, I was still a bit insecure when I went to talk to investors around, is there enough there for an investor to really throw money in this?
Well, the answer was yes.
Yes.
Does anyone have any questions?
Well, I was just sort of curious about how the application works with so you're selling it to organizations, right? But does it follow players as they move and grow throughout?
Absolutely.
Okay. So then how does that work?
And so when we implement an organization, there's a couple things we do in the very beginning. They take a needs assessment. So full disclosure, Minnesota this summer was ranked 47th out of 50 in terms of their implementation of the safety guidelines that a school should be following.
And we want number one.
Right. And so we created an application in partnership with the National Athletic Trainers Association, the Corey Stringer Institute, UNC, and UConn to help these organizations understand the baseline of that. So when you first onboard, we onboard you, you take that assessment. You now know where your organization stands when it comes to your safety guidelines. Are you following them? Are you not? And what you need to do to be best in class. Then we implement, and the parent is introduced to PlayersHealth. They go on, they sign up, most likely through a sport engine, especially if they're here locally or if they're in hockey. Sport engine has like a 97% market share of the hockey industry. So if I have a hockey athlete, I go, they use their sport engine ID, we pull all of their athletes' player profile data, and they just add the medical information. If your kid has asthma, have they had any previous injuries? We collect a ton of information and we present that to the sports organization in the form of some alerts. So now the coach knows that out of their 25 athletes, here are the 5 that have a medical condition. Here are what they are. So now it's not out of sight, out of mind. I coach my son's basketball team right now. I need to know that this kid has an allergy, especially if we're at tournaments the whole day and he's eating God knows what. This allows me to be able to know that. And then also longitudinally, if there's an injury that happens in football and then the kid goes to play hockey, it's there. And then the coach that is receiving the record is now notified. If an injury happens within 6 months of them receiving the record, they're getting a notification. None of this communication / data transfer has ever existed. Most parents, when the athlete is healed and has been returned back to play, I don't want to think about it anymore. It's really kind of where it's at. And then when they go to the next season, they're a new kid at that point. But that's really not the case, especially when it comes to head injuries, neck injuries. There's a bunch of injuries that we want to make sure that that the coach staff, and everyone is mindful of. And that's kind of what we've been making sure that that's possible.
Do you have like pushback from maybe from the players or parents about people knowing somebody's playing football, goes to hockey, knowing about injury, which maybe he has healed, but might, based on perception, impact his selection or performance?
That's a great question. We get that constantly, especially when it comes to just HIPAA and making sure that we're in compliance with how information is shared when it comes to their health information. I think one of the things we combat that with is the parent is in control. They can say who can see what and when, but when they go to start hiding things in our system, they're going to be aware that they're making a decision to not communicate something that could affect their kid's health. And our main focus is to make sure that the parent knows the liability that they have when they make a decision on behalf of their kid. And our main responsibility with the organization is to make sure that they don't make any decision when it comes to the athlete's health. The time where an organization makes the decision or the coach makes a decision is over. If there's an athletic trainer on the sideline, you're not making that decision. The parent is, regardless of how crazy you think the parent is. The parent has to make the decision. And that's really kind of where we're at right now. When this kid, the sports organization could be sued tomorrow for anything. It has to come down to the parent, and we need to make sure that we follow the proper medical clearances for head injuries. We just need to follow the protocol. And if we do that, our organization is safe.
So how's the parent included in the decision if the game's not stopped, for instance?
Well,
If they're up in the stands,
in terms of
how do they connect?
Well, in terms of when we implement an organization, it's all about communication on what should be happening. So when, say, a head injury happened, which is most of the reason why any organization is implementing us. We're doing a USA Hockey implementation right now. They're only documenting head injuries. They're not documenting any other injury. So right now, nationwide, any athlete that has a possible head injury, we have to remove them from play. This isn't our rule. This is the CDC's rule. This is what is being communicated down from every state association / national governing body across the nation. So the organization knows that this should happen. Now, they should document the injury either when the athlete gets to the sideline. More times than not, it's happening towards the end of the day. So the athlete is not allowed back on the field. More times, especially if we're talking club sports, there is no athletic trainer. So I can't facilitate a sideline assessment without an athletic trainer. So there's already these kind of roadblocks built in the way if the organization follows the protocol. And that's what our system is helping them do, basically. And it's all about return to play. So once the injury is documented, there's nothing really the organization can do. Our system requires that the parent upload the medical clearance. Until they do so, the kid can't be returned back.
So they have to go see a doctor in a
Exactly.
health system? So is your data connected to any health systems?
No, not right now. So
Not yet.
Right, not yet, exactly. So the parent still has to upload that form. And right now, they're still paper. So the clearance forms from doctors are still paper.
Sure.
They have to upload those, and then an administrator on our side clears the
Does the
athlete to come
clearance
back.
procedure?
So now, in the beginning of the season, we know that there were 0 injuries. At the end of the season, if we have 15 injuries and 5 of them are head injuries, our system tracks the return to play number, which
You got
should be
data.
0. So we should.
Return to play should be 0?
Well, the idea is that if I have 15 head injuries,
Yep.
I'm going to have 15 athletes that are currently injured. I want those athletes back on the field at some point during the season. So at the end of the season, we should be back at 0. Or maybe there's a really bad concussion and the athlete is still not able to return
So
to
there's
play.
one still.
Exactly. So it's really about tracking return to play. And before our system or any system like ours was in place, there was no communication or accountability around that.
What's the, for lack of a better term, the drop dead number of concussions in the season that a player can sustain and then not come back to the field?
Honestly, it depends on the organization and the parent.
That's who's making the
that
decision,
is
not
making-
a medical opinion.
No.
Wow.
And that's really unfortunate. You can have a kid that have 3 concussions in the season.
Yeah.
And if the parent continues to put their kid back in harm's way, they'll do that. Or the sports organization, they'll have to have some type of, these are all the consultative services that we provide to the organization. They need to have protocols like this in place. Most organizations don't believe that they'll have a kid that have more than 1 concussions in the season. We're seeing it happen.
So you think there'll be at some point basically a barrier
Absolutely.
put out by the states that is a mandatory number of occurrences?
It's like that in collegiate, in college, and it's like that in the pros.
Is it what's it in college?
2.
In a
Within a
football or
6-month
hockey?
season, within a 6-month period.
If you have 2, you're out?
Yes,
Okay.
you're not going back in until the season. You'll be getting out for the season at that point.
Even if you pass the protocol certifications? Okay.
And so in youth sports, that kid could have 3 or 4 in a year,
Wow.
and it's
And
up
it's
to
a
the
parent-based
Yeah, exactly.
decision. Interesting.
It's sad. But you obviously are trying to fix that,
Absolutely.
along with
Yeah.
your team.
And it's just huge education, really, when it comes down to it. And we're trying to build in as much logic in our system that you start alerting parents. Hey, do you know your kid has sustained a head injury within the past 6 months? They've had 2. Maybe you shouldn't return them back to play for another 6 months. These are things that we've shied away from. We're now incorporating like AI. We now have the resources where we can dive into the technology so that we can actually start communicating to the parent, but we still have a lot of learning we need to do. We need to collect a ton of more data, which is why I've always been passionate about giving the platform away for free. The more athletes we have in the system, the more injuries we collect, the better data we have, the more insights we can give to parents to make better decisions. And the sports organization to build in new governance around this, because that's really what's needed, is governance. You can have as many rules as you want. If there's no governance around how you handle these situations, they'll never be followed.
So do you have any, then you have physicians that are subscribing to your system?
Well,
I suppose they can't get the data unless it's been approved by parents or...
At the high school level, 9 times out of 10, we'll have an athletic trainer. So we have 65 high schools that are using our system. 99% of those high schools are athletic trainer driven. Now in the club space, it's the Wild Wild West.
So in the high school with the trainer, are they putting out the requirements for the number of occurrences in a season?
They control return to play.
Okay.
They manage everything.
So you're talking about grade school kids that are suspect to being exposed
mostly
to-
high schools though. Yeah, mostly high schools.
that have the trainers.
Yeah, club,
clubs
there's,
don't have.
yeah. Like, you could have one athletic trainer
Oh, I see.
to a 20,000 soccer tournament, 20,000 athlete soccer tournament. That athletic trainer is not gonna see half the
No.
injuries that happen in a weekend. But we look at a $60,000, or it's not even 60 grand. We look at $2 grand for the athletic trainer to be there for that weekend as a huge financial burden on our sports organization when it could save a kid's life.
Yeah.
And I know that sounds dramatic, but it's really not. Like, we've lost 11 football players this season already, all youth. So high school and young. We've averaged 10 for the past 10 years.
So switching gears on your revenue, you said you 10x, so you went to 200. What is any part of that the insurance revenue yet? Or?
No, all of it was PlayersHealth, really. So we've slowly started to build. We haven't launched the insurance platform. If you know anything about the insurance industry, there's a ton of regulation. So we're finishing up our licensing right now. We have to be licensed in all 50 states because we have sports organizations everywhere. And we have to be licensed in Canada. So Canada and the US are the first 2 markets. 2018, 2019. We're launching UK, Australia, and the EU going into 2019.
So what are you offering? Liability for the clubs or organizations?
Yep, so general liability, accidental, participant to accident insurance, directors and officers, event cancellation, you think about it, we offer the liability insurance for it.
Can the individuals then up their insurance for that season?
The individual at the time, we only have one individual policy they'll be able to buy would be event cancellation. So kid gets hurt a week before a tournament that a parent paid $2,000 for, they'd be able to get we'd make them whole on that policy.
Yeah, earlier you mentioned about providing the platform for free. So do you plan to run it as non-profit or maybe the revenue from insurance or some other streams to make up the...
It's for sure for profit. It's just really who we're getting paid by now. So right now we've been able to work into a bunch of relationships with some insurers. We can't really talk about them right now, but we're being remunerated for the data that we've collected as an aggregate by the insurance company, which is the organizations that have deeper pockets than the sports organizations. So, in insurance, data is everything. So the better I can price a sports organization, the better I understand that risk, the better I can price, the more profitable that risk is. We have a key to what that looks like in sports. And that's really kind of the value prop that the insurer has. So they're willing to pay for that so that we acquire the data, so that we can better price and understand the risk. So it's a win-win for us all. And now our company is in a position where we can scale in a way that we've always dreamed.
Nice. It's interesting that from the player point of view, getting the information up to insurance, how you pivoted to that area. So this is a general question to anybody who has the answer. For startup, you have many ideas. When I heard that when Apple came up with tablet, they had to put it aside and then work on a smartphone and then went back to a tablet because they just felt it would be better that way. So when you started this app, assuming that you knew about insurance and other things you can do, if you put them all together, most investors will tell you that we can't do all this, so you have to start with something.
Right.
So my question and my frustration in my own startup is I have ideas, but when I talk to people, they'll say, oh, it's just too much, you can't do this, you can't do that. But I know over time it will be done. So how do you position yourself from the very beginning to attract attention and then, but you will do more than that. So in terms of trying to, put something that will actually attract people to work with you or investors at the very beginning when you have so many ideas and people will not get that because maybe they don't know or they're not into that terrain. So it's just a challenge to me and, from what you're experiencing. I don't know if you saw that.
That's a really good question. I think I'm a dreamer in terms of when I have an idea, I'm like, wow, okay, I want to go and validate it and test it. Our COO, Chris, luckily I was able to bring him on board about a year ago, and he's very data driven. So if we make a decision, I have to show him a scientifically or statistically significant sample size of an idea that I've presented. So if I have an idea, I have to go find the evidence. I have to validate that. And that's how we make decisions as a company now. The bigger your company gets, and we're 16 people, we're still small. The bigger your company gets, the more data-driven your company has to be in terms of how you make the decisions, because these decisions could affect the trajectory of your company. And we've used data to kind of land at this point. Interviews, connecting with our customers, it's been a lot of listening, a lot of A/B testing, a lot of kind of validating and pivoting through data. And I think it's really finding some of the key data points or metrics that you're looking at to validate before you make a decision. And I had to learn that the hard way in the beginning of my career. I think now I'm more data driven than I've ever been.
I think you're seeing the results of
Right.
that data, which is exciting because then you realize this is the direction I need to go. And this is why it's valuable. It's very valuable to the investors because it's data.
Right.
But it's also very valuable to the parents and the families and the coaches because it's information to keep these people safe and bring them even further to the so-called pro.
Absolutely. And I think the big misconception is that when you run your company as kind of a data-driven in terms of decision-making, you think it slows you down, and it really doesn't. The more data you collect in terms of how you make a decision, when you do have it fine-tuned and you know exactly the direction you're going in, you can pour fuel on the fire. And I think that is the position that have been focusing on, is that we've tested out a ton. There's a lot that we know, there's a lot that we still don't know. But the things that we do know that we're really clear on, we can move on instantly.
Because you know you can scale.
Exactly.
Because it's the recipe of we do this, we add this, and it goes again.
Exactly.
Yeah, so it's been really interesting hearing your story and the drive and the passion. And, you know, really when I first met you, when hearing your story, when you were telling me a little bit about Players Health, and it was even before the insurance, and it was even before the Google.
Mm-hmm.
And I think it was way back, I don't know, maybe a couple of years.
Yeah.
And it was just the whole concept, hearing the concept of Players Health, helping people be able to manage and monitor and really know what your child is doing as they're getting older to become someone like you, even though you had a couple injuries. Because that happened, you wouldn't be here today. And so I just like to sometimes point that out. The person you are today, you wouldn't be unless you went through some of the trials and tribulations. So with that said, you had mentioned a couple things that you would tell an entrepreneur, what you would recommend. But talking to yourself, what would you recommend telling yourself? What would you do differently? So today, who you are today, looking back 5 years ago, what would you have told yourself that you should be doing?
I think that's like a perfect question for where I'm at right now. I've been thinking a lot about that. I'm actually writing a book right now that has been something that's kind of come to me. Everyone's like, Tyrre, you should write a book, and I never really knew what I wanted to write about. And up until this point, I'm at a place right now where I've never been more content with where I'm at right now. Like I've always had this place where I'm like, well, I'm not where I want to be, not where I want to be. Right now, I know exactly, I'm happy with where I'm at right now. And to get to the success I'm at right now, it seems like everything that I was taught or someone told me I had to be, like it was all a lie. It was just like I'm finally coming to a place that like I can now, who I am is what makes me successful, and knowing who I am is the key for me to be successful. And I didn't know that growing up. Like I was always looking for validation from like a million different people, and I never looked internally around like Tyrre, what do you want to do? As opposed to asking people, what do they think I should be doing, and then trying to do that. If I could tell myself 5 years ago, 10 years ago, I'd tell myself to believe in myself. And then everything else would just kind of fall into place.
That's really cool. Anyone else have any questions? Okay. Well, thank you very much.
Thank you.
And I think in conclusion, I think it's very inspiring to state, to believe in yourself. Because everyone is an individual person living their own lives, seeing through their own eyes. And when you have the drive as an entrepreneur, you know, you want to do what you're supposed to do, but none of us know what we're supposed to do. You know, and I always share this with everyone, and that is, you had mentioned that you failed on your Series A. That wasn't a failure.
No.
That was a data point to where you are today. So you have to look at it as a scientist, where your failures are successful failures, because if you didn't do that, you wouldn't have had the drive to do what you're doing today. So hats off to you for writing a book, and you just publicly stated that.
Yeah, well, it's still in the process of being written, but I will, you know, a year from now, I think it'll definitely be something that I'll be presenting. There's no real expectations for it. It's really just this is kind of my journey. This is kind of how I landed to this place. Maybe other people feel the same, and maybe they're having the same issues.
Well, and I think that people will read your book, and the core is believe in yourself. you know, all that other, those comments, the negative, it's just noise. Just, you need to feng shui it, move it aside, and just keep going.
And I didn't receive a ton of negativity. I think it was really just me reaching for validation on who I should be. When people are, the most successful people I've ever met in my entire life, people that I've now have kind of been able to be and kind of been welcomed into this community, they know who they are. They know exactly who they are. They know what they're good at. They know what they're not good at. And I think that is kind of what is the biggest awakening for me, is that, Ty, you know who you are. You'll be fine. Everything else will work out.
Yeah, because if you surround yourself with people, if you know you're not good at finances, then you pull someone that is in.
Yeah.
So that's really hard, I think, for a lot of entrepreneurs, is to let go and realize you don't have to spend all this time and money to learn something when you can just hire someone to get it done, so then you can focus on other things. But just really want to thank you for investing your time and coming here and sharing your story.
I appreciate it.
And really exciting to see what the future holds. And thank you.
No, thank you. I
Very
appreciate
much.
you guys coming out.